Erwin, it's a pleasure to have this discussion with you. So, of course, a couple months ago, we had a discussion in terms of the US elections. And at the time, you were saying that you felt confident that Kamala Harris would win. Of course, now it's the time of this recording. The date of this recording is November 10, 2024. And of course, the news is in fact that Donald Trump not only won, but he won quite decisively. So let's start off on that note, your feedback, your thoughts on the outcome of the US elections. For those who are new here, Erwin is, of course, an immigration expert, and he is the managing director of Caribbean Immigrant Services.
Thanks very much for the opportunity. Yes, we did speak a couple of months ago, right after the announcement was made. That was just about 3 months ago, in fact. One could say, as it was mentioned, it was one of those consequential elections of all times. The stark realities of the United States have been born in front of us. Misogyny, racism, are all high hallmarks of this last election. And, democracy says whoever passes the poll first and whoever gets the most votes, whether in the electoral college or the popular vote, wins the elections. And in fairness, as of now, there has been no reported indication that there is any nefarious activities. We don't know. But Donald Trump is the president-elect. Now, what does this mean? It means then that we are now preparing ourselves for a second coming Trump 2.0. And there are concerns. The issues at hand were very evident. Obviously, based on straw polling and what people have said why they voted Donald Trump because of the economy and that they thought you'd handle it better. So that being the case, then that's what we have to look forward to. But within those parameters, however, are some very disconcerting issues, especially as relates to immigration and the plight of those who are not white in the United States and the role and how they're looked at. And you'd have heard the disparaging comments made about tainting the blood of white people and stuff of the sort. And those situations seem to not have even impacted some of the folks in the community of color who voted for Trump. But the challenge for immigrants in the community will be one of concern going forward, whichever way you cut it tomorrow. Because if it is to remove undocumented immigrants, and the target first, they said, are those who are criminals, it will have an impact. So that is going to come with some challenges.
Indeed. And Donald Trump, of course, that was one of his key ticket items throughout his campaigning. He spoke of, once he's inaugurated, having mass deportation of illegal immigrants. Can he actually do that within, because he actually said within 24 hours he would start the process?
Well, the process is largely a circumspect call. The process, yes. One of the things you understand is that fear is one of the major ingredients in this whole fight as it relates to undocumented, until it relates to immigration. And once you create the environment of such, it will start the process. So one could argue and say that the process has started. People are concerned. And there are some people who will, at the term self-deport, will remove themselves from the system. You will now find people probably go underground, The fact is that, or make other arrangements. There will be, in my opinion, a rush to get certain things done before now and then. So yes, the process, in my estimation, has started because one of the main ingredients here, fear, has been struck and it is already permeating the marketplace.
And you handle a lot of immigrants just by the very nature of your business, Caribbean Immigrants.
Yes.
What advice would you give them in light of what Trump has indicated he would do once he officially becomes the president, particularly those as well who are illegal?
Or undocumented.
Or undocumented.
You see, first and foremost, I look at it from the larger sphere. If you're an immigrant in the United States, and whether you're a naturalized green card holder or undocumented, make sure your documents are in order. my friends and I, like myself, who are citizens, I make sure I have a copy of my citizenship certificate and my US passport on my phone. I urge persons to do the same. Why? When the whole process, I understand, will incorporate the army and local police departments. If we already have a rather unique relationship with police departments as it now stands, what is to drive a police department or one of those meddling Karens on the street to say that person over there is an undocumented immigrant? And then she will be believed by the authority. I am picked up, right? I am going through the system. I now have to prove that I am not who they say I am. So I say to folks, make sure you have your documents on you at all times in the space of having something on your phone, which is the most convenient methodology. Because my big fear is that many people will be caught up in the system who need not to be. All right. We have a racist society. Let's not kid ourselves. We have a racist society and one now that is empowered. So the average guy, the average Joe Blow on the street who could not speak up before because of his racist tenure can now do so. He has a guy in the White House. He has the government behind him. So you'll have those meddling situations which can cause confusion. For those who are undocumented, if you were putting off straightening out yourself or doing things to make yourself legitimate in the system, get on it now. I don't know why you'll be waiting. If you have no other means of regularizing yourself, then you have to find ways and ways in which I will not speak in public, but I gather there are ways. You have to find ways to secure the safety of your family and yourself. With argument being, what if you are removed from your family? What will happen? Make sure you have plans in place. If you are involved in part of the economic environment of the society, make sure you're in good standing and make sure you're protecting what you have earned. Outside of that, tomorrow, this environment would not be one that I'll be discussing with any individual as to how they go about circumventing the rules, because I could find myself compromised in the whole situation. But I say to folks, find ways to regularize yourself. If you don't find ways to regularize yourself, find ways to survive.
Yes.
If the choice is to remain, because at the end of the day, it is your choice.
So based on what you just said, do they have time? It's already November, almost mid-November.
Yeah, in some cases they have time, yes. In some cases they have time. There are people who have been sitting on a green card for many years and have not decided to become a citizen. It's now time to do so. And even though citizenship is not a guarantee, because they do say that they'll find ways to denaturalize person, but then it would come at high scenarios where you'd have some proof have to be made that you're doing some things that are not in the best interest of the nation. Again, Donald Trump having control of the Senate and probably the House and the judiciary, who knows? But I say to folks, now is not time to be meddling around, not what we say now, taking out your becoming a citizen, because at least you're at a level, a more firmer foundation. Green cards are can a green card holder can find themselves in lots of issues, because if they're talking about persons who have committed crimes, I don't know to what level of crimes they're talking about at this time. And you do have green card holders who presently may have committed a crime but are still qualified for citizenship. So, if you're on that bubble, peruse it. The time is now.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I wasn't even thinking about green card holders. In my mind, I'm thinking because he mentioned illegals, I'm thinking people that may have crossed the border and they have no papers at all. So you're
Yes,
saying
and
possibly green card holders.
yeah, because you could have a crime too, and you're a criminal. I mean, they say that their target is on immigrants who have criminal records, and if that is the case, and whether you're undocumented or not, you're still caught up in a dragnet, you know. And we all know it costs as much to prove yourself if you're guilty as if you prove yourself you're innocent. Not guilty as if you prove yourself you're innocent. So if you can remove that obstacle, go about it now. Make sure your documents. And one thing I want to press here to you, Tamara, is that Now is not the time to be wondering where my birth certificate is, or if my passport is okay, or if my citizenship certificate. Make sure you have your documents secured. Because you could find yourself in a situation where you're not around and someone needs to look for your documents. Make sure they are secured. We are in that environment, and I'm not being an alarmist, but when you see daily persons from ICE, a former head of immigration and custom enforcement, saying that they're all ready and what they're going to be doing. Well, if they're telling you all these things, I'm not sure that 100% will happen. But at a minimum, we must be prepared. We can't be dilly-dallying around when we find ourselves in the middle of the storm. We must have our documents in a safe place and can be accessible.
Those are definitely words of warning that people need to heed to. I should have asked you this from the get-go, but once the announcement, or once it became apparent that Donald Trump would become the president-elect,
Mhm.
what was the sentiment at the time, and what's the sentiment since on the ground, particularly among Caribbean immigrants? You, of course, you're based in New York, you're a Jamaican immigrant. What's the sentiment?
Aghast. It was like a nightmare. In fact, I have not watched cable news since Monday. Because it's just one of those situations. I think one of the fallouts of this, we speak about mental health. I think many people will need to get spoken to. I mean, it has taken a toll. Just the election cycle by itself has been such. I know with expectations and that you would be moving on from this. And we find that not only are we not moving on from this, that it's alive and kicking. And don't believe that people are modest in victory. We're talking about retribution. When you consider that there's presently, that community-based organizations who may not necessarily align with the principles or maybe deemed that they are terrorists because they may have been aggressors or part of movements that seek to fight against particular aspects of the system could be targeted. And you could find yourself, against, the leadership of the land. And this is not a situation where there's a pragmatic approach here. No, there's some petty stuffs that will come reality. I mean, retribution in victory is a serious recipe for disaster. We know that we beat you, but we also gonna, as they say, lock you up too, because you said something that I didn't like. So these are some of the concerns that are on people's minds. And also, we live in a world today that based on the results and how the manifestation of the results and how people are articulating their opinions and comments, that as I walk on the street and I may see a person who's a Caucasian person, as a black man, I am concerned because I don't know what's going on here. That is the reality. We may not want to talk about it, but that is the reality. And at the same token, as immigration advocates and stuff like that, the whole advocacy movement have internal issues because the people who will stand to be at risk the most, there are upticks in their support for the new administration. So the question then asks itself, what is going on here? What is your sacrifice in all this? Are we on the front line fighting for the same thing? So these are some of the issues that are still yet left unresolved. So there's a lot of uncertainties, but one thing for certain is that come, was it January 20th, Donald Trump will be president. And those are the realities of life.
Realities of life indeed. What went wrong for Kamala, or actually what went right for Trump?
I couldn't say. All I can say is this, is that money in politics plays a critical role. And he
They
obviously
said
had
she
the
had $1 billion. That's what they said.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you also have persons who entered into this thing for their own self expectations. The country obviously not ready for a woman president, a woman who is black. And to me, those are the stark realities. Because when you see certain groups coming out who you can tell by their makeup that they're patriarchal societies, the Amish country, for example, in Pennsylvania, even those are in the people in our world, and men who white men who will never yield the authority of women in their households. And then we have in the African American community so many who stayed home, didn't vote, didn't vote. I'm not worried about even those who voted, who didn't vote. When you look at the numbers of black folks in the 7 swing states who didn't vote, she should have won this race. So Donald Trump brought out his base, improved enough on his base. Meanwhile, the Democrats stayed home. So it falls on the shoulder of those who should have done better. And the fact that she was a candidate, and I would imagine a well-qualified candidate, there have been lesser candidates than her who have won office. Example as we speak. But such is the life and times in these United States. And those who don't believe that racism and misogyny are part of this, then I guess we have differences in opinion. But we leave it civil. I will leave it civil. I don't know about the other guy.
Not to play the devil's advocate, Erwin, but as it relates to the immigration and the
Yes.
immigration policy that Donald Trump has put forward, there are some that would say, in other words, he's quote unquote making America great again. He's getting out these
He's
illegal,
making America white again.
well, he's getting out these illegal immigrants who he says are committing numerous crimes.
Yeah,
And at the
yeah.
same time, for
But
example,
that's a scapegoat though, That's a
I,
scapegoat.
I know, but stick a pin. But for example, here in Jamaica, whenever we have the Haitians who are escaping from their reality in Haiti and they come, you often find a lot of Jamaicans are saying, no, they need to go back because life is already hard for us. We don't have any
Mm,
space for them.
mm.
Wouldn't some say that's the same thing that Trump is doing, making life better for the citizens of America? I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You see, if that being is the case, then take them out of the prisons because we have a judicial system that you arrest people, make the laws that if you arrest them, you get them out. But you're saying you're deporting people. That means then that you're going into neighborhoods and picking up people. That's different. They also had a situation, so let's not forget something. And these are some of the harsh economic realities that will be born. In Texas, in the gas and oil industry, 40% of that industry are immigrants. And we'll say immigrants because we don't know how many that 40% are undocumented or documented. When you look at the food and agricultural industry, the very jobs that some of my black brothers said that immigrants are taking them away from them, Americans not doing those jobs. Who's going to do them? All right. When we look in the tech industry, Silicon Valley is nervous now because largely and truly, America is not really an intelligent nation. We depend on immigrants for our sustainability. All right. When you think of a government coming in who says they're going to get rid of the Department of Education, and how does that work again? What about those persons who depend on benefits to enter the education system? How does that work again? So what are we doing? Dumbing ourselves down in the process and dumbing ourselves down, period. So yes, I can understand here in Jamaica, Haitians coming to this country, and I hope that we find ways that we can accommodate our brothers and sisters because then Jamaica must be ready, in that case, Tamar, to take home what? Can Jamaica handle 50,000 persons? Okay. Can we handle 10,000 persons? I want that. No, we can't. So, we're going to have to find some way to make this thing work for all of us. I don't support persons who commit crimes in Jamaica or in the United States. They must be punished. But there's also a rule of law. they have do-right processes too. And who are we to say? And then we find many people today who would have gone through similar system and regularized themselves, who are some of the most vociferous voices out there about locking the border. We got in, now it's time to close the door, don't let anybody else in. Interesting.
Interesting indeed. I actually was listening to a discussion about that same thing. They were talking though in the context of the Latino community
Yeah.
and saying there are many immigrants who
Oh,
actually
yes.
they get in, they're regularized, and then they
They
don't
lock the
want
door.
anybody else coming in.
They lock the door. They lock the door. But you see, the economy will require more people to work. And I don't think America has the quality there. And then here comes the other piece now to countries like Jamaica and elsewhere. One of the plans that Donald Trump ran on was to discontinue what is called chain migration, which, by the way, is the same process by which his wife's parents would have entered the United States, and probably the vice president's wife too. All right, parents, all right? To end chain migration. Chain migration, basically, ladies and gentlemen, is that let's say a mother migrates, gets married, find ways to get her stuff, then petition for her children or spouse or parent comes up, petition for their children, chain migration. And go to what's called a meritocracy, primarily the nuclear family, children under 21 and spouse. And then now the other piece would be where they look at the skill sets of you coming in and take the cream of the crop. So therefore, for Jamaica, that'll be like brain drain on steroids. We take the best and that's it. So these are situations that we have to be mindful about, how that would impact our nation. Many persons here in this country go to the United States not for the sand or the beach, but to better themselves, and in so doing, become a part of that conundrum that sends home the $3 to $5 billion a year that comes into Jamaica that keeps this country buoyant. So there's another side to that, you know. So I am a true believer though that the hoopla is all in the excitement right now. When the harsh realities hit, it will come to a place where we realize that, yes, I really don't like that, but I have to do that on both sides. Because there has to be a meeting spot. It can't just be one way. Some people be satisfied that we got the criminals out. And then host countries for the criminals have to be prepared now as to how they handle them. So there comes another problem created on the other side. So to be curious to see how governments work with the new administration going forth, if immigration of that level of deportation becomes that brutal, and how it impacts the nations. So it's a lot to swallow. It's a lot to get through. But I believe that that we'll find a pathway that is beneficial for both sides.
Yes, and you mentioned in terms of the economy. Obviously, here in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, we rely a lot on remittances. And a lot of those remittances are obviously from relatives, are from immigrants in the
And
US.
many of whom are undocumented, by the way.
Exactly. So, what impact will that have, even on Jamaica's and the Caribbean economy with the loss of those remittances if a mass deportation of immigrants take place?
Well, one could just play the numbers out. But you see, it also starts back at the source, because if it is that employers will now be pressured more in the United States, so realize that they're penalized if they hire undocumented immigrants, then you could have a whole swath of employment opportunities eliminated. When that takes place, right away, you could have a cut. You will have a cut in the remittance flows into Jamaica and elsewhere, wherever they are outflows, right? So that in itself is a brutal attack right there. Then coupled, like you said, with the physical removal of the person, which should take some time, that would also remove that inflow. So it's a combination. But one of the things that I pride about my people is that we're good hurdlers. The higher the hurdle, we find ways to get over it. And I remain optimistic that our people will survive. You know, they say, you know, Tamar, that if you seek a silver lining, we have dark clouds right now. That's where you find it. And we have some serious dark clouds. I believe we'll find that silver lining. I truly believe that.
That's a wonderful note to wrap things up on. But before I go, you are, of course, the managing director for the Caribbean Immigrant Services.
Yes.
Any advice you want to share, any last minute advice that
Sure.
since may reach
Sure.
out to you to get?
Sure. Yeah, one of the warnings I say to folks right now, I know it's a tense situation, lots of concerns. These are usually times, Tamar, when lots of money from our community go out for services or immigration services, because there are lots of persons out there who will give the impression they can do. I urge our people, now is not the time to do that, because technically speaking, there's no benefits within the system now that is there for us. The benefit lies in what you can do for self. You see, you know, there are no programs out there you can latch onto and get onto. You know, there's a tendency for persons to come up with these ideas that do this and this will happen. As I urge persons to reach out to their church community, their trusted church communities, and persons within the community who have been there and have track records of deliverability and honesty before you make investments in these schemes.
A word to the wise is sufficient. Any last minute advice?
Well, always to say that, you know, what you do, my dear, you know, these are platform and programs that helps to educate our community. And I hope that we have more of this, because now more than ever, within the clutter of information, we need to make sure that the message remains firm, safe, and secured.
Thank you. And how can they contact you if they want to consult with you?
Telephone number 347-678-3546.
Thank you so much, Erwin Clare, Managing Director of Caribbean Immigrant Services, a Jamaican immigrant based in New York. And of course, we just did a synopsis of what took place there in the US presidential election and the impact it will have on Caribbean immigrants living there. Thank you again, and
Always.
all the best.